Good evening, everybody. Welcome inside the Lambeau Speak podcast. I am Bobby Winter. Nate couldn't make it this week. His computer actually is on the fritz right now. So unfortunately, I will be doing this solo, but it's probably a good thing after that beatdown. Nate definitely would have went off on Matt LaFleur after this game. So you're stuck with me today. You can find me on Twitter at Bobby A. Winter. This is a Toilet to Titles production. You can find them at Toilet to Titles on Twitter. You can also find all of our written content over at toiletstotitles.com. You can support our sister network over at CFB Nation on Twitter. Thank you for all the Patreons who subscribe to us and everybody who participates on the Gilded app. We're constantly on that app every day, talking about everything from football to everyday life stuff. And it seems like the community is growing bigger and bigger every single day. It's really exciting. You guys should check it out. So the Packers fall to the Lions in kind of an embarrassing fashion. It kind of had a feeling like last Sunday where the Packers were down 17-0 and then all of a sudden led a fourth quarter comeback. The first half was abysmal again. And this is starting to be a trend, not just on this current year's Packers team, but with Matt LaFleur dating back to last year as well. The Packers kind of start slow. I couldn't really put my finger on it if it was a Jordan Love thing or if it was a Packers thing or a Matt LaFleur thing. But whatever the problem is, it needs to change. They're coming out with a plan, and the plan isn't working. And it seems like they're trying to see how a team is playing them. They're making their adjustments, and then based off how the team's been playing them, they're making adjustments and then coming back. But this team is not built to play from behind. Our run defense is atrocious, and you saw that again today. David Montgomery had almost 30 carries, he had 32 carries for 121 yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs had another 8 for 40. So they ran the ball on us over 40 times for over 160 rush yards. The defense has a very good pass defense, but it's not built to stop the run. So theoretically, this team should not be well enough to come back from such a large deficit like they did last week. And this game proved it. Being behind more than 20 points at the end of the first half, it just seemed insurmountable. Last week was kind of an outlier, where they came back in the fourth quarter. And it's probably because the Saints lost their starting quarterback. Maybe not. Again, I'm sticking by my thing last week when I said that Jameis Winston is a preferred starter. He was a preferred starter in this league for over 6 years. He's not just any backup quarterback, but the Lions also aren't any team, and they proved that today. This is definitely the brand new Lions. The Lions came out not only just on defense, but on offense. They had a very good plan to attack the Packers. And you can almost say, who's to blame on the defense? Was it Joe Barry? Was it the players? It seems like all the Packers fans want to throw the blame at Joe Barry, right? But I mean, how many missed tackles can you have before you're like, maybe it isn't the coaching? You know what I mean? There were so many plays where people are just not tackling people, not bringing them to the ground, letting them pick up all this yak, where you're like, if you were to just get a stop at the first hit or even the second hit, they wouldn't have picked up so many first downs on the ground. It just seemed like these, especially David Montgomery, just carrying people as they're trying to bring him to the ground. And he's picking up all these yards after contact. It was frustrating. It was really difficult to watch. There really wasn't too many bright spots on this game. And I promise, I'm kind of a glass half full kind of guy. So I will talk about some of the bright spots that I've seen. But I mean, there was really a lot to take away from this game that was pretty negative. First of all, with the stands. So this was one of those gold package games for Milwaukee. And there was way too many Lions fans in the stands. They did a shot of the 50-yard line where it was basically a sea of blue, which really infuriates me, honestly, because they have so many people waiting for these season tickets. There's people, they literally pass it down from generation to generation because they believe that in their lifetime, they will not get a chance to earn these tickets. So they're hoping that either their children or their grandchildren will get an opportunity to get these tickets. And yet you have people selling their tickets to Lions fans online. And it was a really piss poor showing in Lambeau Field, which was very disappointing, especially since the stadium's been sold out since the 1960s. You expect, with such a huge home field advantage, it's one of the biggest home field advantages in the National Football League, that you wouldn't see so many Lions fans. So that was the first thing, but even before the kickoff. And then the defense. It seemed like nobody showed up to play after the first couple of drives. The first drive was, I'm not going to lie, it was very impressive. They were stout against the run, and they scored that first touchdown because it was a broken play because the cornerback slipped, which happens. People slip, mistakes are made. Okay, no big deal. It wasn't like they were playing poorly. He tried to press him off the line of scrimmage. He slipped. He was wide open because of it, caught a touchdown. Okay. But it seemed like the only player on defense who actually showed up ready to play was Quay Walker. Quay Walker was everywhere. He was unbelievable. He was making basically every single tackle on every play. And he did have that one boneheaded mistake. So I'm not going to say that it cost them the game, because they were down by 10 in the fourth quarter with only 7.5 minutes left. Was it a bonehead mistake? Yeah. Should he have known the rule? Absolutely. But it didn't cost them the game, because there was 3 quarters before that where the offense looked awful. They were like anemic. I think going into the end of the first half, they had like 9 yards of positive offensive play when you account for all the negative plays that they had. That's just unacceptable. I don't know what their plan was. It seemed like at first that they wanted to just take advantage of their secondary. That was one of the things going into the game. They believed that the Lions defensive line was pretty stout, that they wanted to take advantage of the secondary. So they came out like 3 straight pass plays in the first drive, but their defensive line was pretty stout and they were all over our offensive line. Last week, it was the same starting 5 and they looked pretty good without David Bakhtiari, but this week it was different. And this is like, when they were talking about last week and we were like, oh, well, this is what it's like when you play against a good team. Well, they played against another really good team and they showed it, because the Lions aren't just good on defense. They're very good on offense. Ben Johnson had some really good plays drawn up. They have a lot of really good players on offense. Their offensive line is unbelievable. Jared Goff even looked good under pressure. It was just, like from top to bottom, just a really poor performance. And this game just kind of reflected on the fact that the Lions are pretty much better than the Packers right now on all 3 facets of the game: offense, defense, special teams. So on offense, right? So Christian Watson coming back, Aaron Jones coming back, you thought that they would have been a bigger part of the game plan. I can understand why they weren't, because it was their first game back, and Matt LaFleur even said that they were going to really be considerate of Christian Watson and try to limit how much they were going to be playing him, because it's a long season. He's just coming back off injury. You want to make sure that there aren't any setbacks, and now all of a sudden you don't have him again for another couple of weeks, because hamstrings can be like that. Once you feel like you're okay, it's a very easy injury to aggravate. So I understand them not really putting him too much into the game plan. But Aaron Jones getting 5 carries is unacceptable. The entire game, they had 10 carries between Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Aaron Jones is the most talented player on this offense. I don't care if you think Christian Watson's super athletic or whatever. Aaron Jones has been doing it longer. He is a proven commodity. The offense looks completely different when he is getting the ball. So him touching the ball 5 times is just flat out unacceptable. And, this has been going on for years, dating back to, even before Matt LaFleur took over this team. They get away from Aaron Jones, and then all of a sudden they're like, why isn't it working? Aaron Jones needs to be a bigger part of the offense. They need to have a focal point on getting him the ball more. even when they make these adjustments, they have to have adjustments in game that factor Aaron Jones into the game plan. Because even if he is coming off injury, which he said after the first week when he got injured in that first game, that he felt like he could have gone back in, that might have just been player talk, like showing that he was, tough and ready to play and he could play every week. That's fine. But they put him in the game. They gave him carries. And he is more productive than A.J. Dillon. Even coming off of an injury, he was more productive than A.J. Dillon was. Aaron Jones was averaging over 3 yards a carry, 3.2 yards per carry, and A.J. Dillon was averaging 2.0. So, yeah, the Lions' defensive front is very good. But Aaron Jones is dynamic. You don't have to just rush him inside or just do outside zone with him. You can get him involved in the passing game. You could do these leaks throughout, leak him through the offensive line, or you do these swing passes. I mean, he's a great route runner. It just blew my mind that once they saw that the offensive line wasn't protecting Jordan Love in the way that they thought that they were going to, that they didn't immediately start switching to short game or getting Aaron Jones involved in the short game. No, there was that one backwards pass where, they were trying to take advantage of a short pass, and the Lions blew it up. The Lions just flat out just blew up the Packers offensive line, and Love had no option but to throw it away. And unfortunately, it was considered a backward pass, and it ultimately ended up stalling that drive. But they didn't do anything to help the offensive line at all. They just kind of threw Jordan out there, and they're like, hey, Jordan, obviously they're coming after you. You got to figure it out, which they started to do some deeper dropbacks, which ultimately worked. Some of the best plays that they had today were on 7-step or deep dropbacks. For instance, the pass to Jaden Reed, which ultimately shouldn't have counted. It was double zeros, and it seemed like the Lions kind of weren't ready for it because they thought that they weren't going to get the playoff in time. Really, the play shouldn't have counted, but it did. So it was a beautiful pass and obviously a very beautiful catch. And Christian Watson getting 2 passes and scoring the first touchdown, that was nice. If anybody's like me and they played him on their fantasy team hoping that he would break out this game, even coming off of an injury, I was kind of like, maybe, you never know. Like sometimes these players come off injury and they're just like so stoked to be on the field that, they just start coming out like a man on fire and just start making plays. So I played him on my fantasy team, got me 10 points. So that was kind of nice. There's really not too many other bright spots you could talk about. Because the Lions just really just bullied the Packers throughout this entire game. From, the run game with over 40 carries, Sam Laporta looked unguardable. He only ultimately had 4 catches, but for 56 yards. The dude gets open. He's an excellent route runner. And he doesn't go down on the first tackle, which, he's a big tight end. We understand that or whatever. And the Packers just ultimately had a really hard time bringing people down today on their first attempt to tackle people. They did have a couple of really good stops in the run, but ultimately they didn't matter because you would stop somebody either at the line of scrimmage or a -1 yard run and then let up a 9-yard run immediately afterwards, which that's great. But in the grand scheme of things, they still let up 160 yards on the ground at home, which is just unacceptable. I don't know. I don't understand why the Lions aren't utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs more. David Montgomery is a fine running back. He was really good in college. Obviously, everybody knows Nate was a big fan of his in college and everything. But Jahmyr Gibbs, my comp for him was Aaron Jones. I don't understand why they're not utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs in their offense more. Jahmyr Gibbs even had a higher yards per carry than David Montgomery did in this game, which kind of blows my mind because this is not the first time that it's happened this season. And they just still, it's not even close. It's not even like a 50-50 split. David Montgomery's getting 80% of the carries and Jahmyr Gibbs is getting 20%, if that. Whoever drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in their fantasy league in the first round, they're pulling their hair out right now. I just don't understand. And it wasn't even like on the the passing game, that one wide receiver. Like, we would have thought, like, hey, you got to lock up Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, oh, maybe if Jair played, like, it would have made a difference. No, he distributed the ball very well. I mean, no wide receiver had more than 5 catches, and most of them had between 3 and 5. So, I mean, when they're putting on a clinic, what Jared Goff is just evenly distributing the ball and scoring 34 points on the road. I mean, they showed the stats of what he looks like on the road versus when he's at home, and it looked like a home game for him. And it really was a home game for him because of how many Lions fans there were in the stadium. I promise I'm not going to be all negative. So, you know, there's really not much positive stuff to take out of this, but we have to also remember that this is a very young team. Not only is it a young team, it's the youngest team in the league. And this whole year, we have to understand that this year is a building year. This is an evaluation year. This is to see, what does this team have? How do these young players perform? Do we have some guys? Where are the holes on this roster? Where do we need to fill them? Is Jordan Love the guy? Is Jordan Love not the guy? Because at times, Jordan Love looks like the guy. There's some passes that he makes that are just high-level quarterback play. They're unbelievable throws. And then there's some bonehead passes where you're like, yo, he threw it behind the receiver. Of course it was a pass breakup. Or that was a huge overthrow. You know, there was some times where he was throwing passes and we're just like, yep, another overthrow. Yep, another overthrow. But that can be worked on, right? I feel like he has good instincts for the game. And I feel like he diagnoses defenses well. This game was pretty hard for him to do that because it seemed like every time the ball was snapped, he had a defender in his face within a second. The offensive line just really did not give him an opportunity to go through his reads, to figure out exactly where he needed to go with the ball. And he was under duress almost 50% of his dropbacks, which is just unacceptable. The offensive line has played very, very well up to this game. And maybe you could chalk it up to, everybody has a bad day or everybody has a bad game. But, they have 10 days now it's kind of like a mini bye because they're playing on Thursday and then they'll play again until the following Sunday. So they have some time right now to check out the tape, to figure out what's going on, to figure out who their best 5 is, to get Elton Jenkins, feeling better. So that way he can hopefully play through a whole game. Because that would be huge because Royce Newman ain't it. Royce Newman hasn't been it for a long time. It's almost shocking to believe that he was a preferred starter on this offensive line at one point. But, and he played well last week. But just like how everybody can have a bad game, everybody can also have a really good game. And, it just seemed like the same old Royce Newman out there again. Rasheed Walker, he had a rough night. He had a rough night. It was just, it was hard to watch. But again, this is his first time playing live. Like last year, he was basically redshirted. All he did was practice. So, for his second game coming out, being the starter, I can forgive that. Royce Newman's been on this team for over 3 years, and that's just bad. It's just bad. But, for the Packers being 2-2 right now, which, again, I'm not going to boast about this too much, but I also did have them losing to the Lions, so I'm 4-0 on the season. I thought it would be closer than 34-20, especially with Aaron Jones and Christian Watson coming back off injury. A lot of outlets thought that this game would come down to a field goal. It was never coming down to a field goal. Even within the first 15 minutes of the game, you knew it wasn't going to come down to a field goal. The Lions just came out and looked unstoppable right from the beginning of the game, which wasn't great. But, now they have time. They have 10 days for everybody to rest and get relaxed and healthy. Aaron Jones will have another 10 days before he needs to perform in another game. So hopefully he'll be ready to shoulder a larger load of the offense because the Packers desperately need him to. And Christian Watson, hopefully he can start becoming a bigger part of the offense than what they had envisioned for him today, which leads me to my other thing. Romeo Doubs had 9 catches for almost 100 yards today. Romeo Doubs might be wide receiver 1, and that's not from a talent perspective. It's just from a, hey, this dude's available. He performs. He's clearly gotten better from last year. It's like a night and day difference. He showed flashes last year, but like this year, he looks like a legit wide receiver. So if Watson can get healthy and make a year 2 leap from how he played last year, I mean, this offense could look really, really good with those two as our starting 2 wide receivers. I'm very, very excited for when Christian Watson is 100% healthy and is a bigger part of the plan for the offense. Because, this could be really special. Christian Watson, everybody knows the talent. Everybody knows he's big, he's fast, he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. And he's been working on becoming an all-around wide receiver and not just a deep threat, So it's going to be exciting. We have some time now before the next game that the Packers can really figure out what they have in Jordan Love. They were coming off of a short week last week, and it was kind of a holy crap, they can't believe that they won that game, and it seemed like that they wanted to throw it all on Jordan's shoulders, which, this was his 4th start in the 2023 season, his 5th start in his entire career. Maybe, lean on the run game a little bit more, especially in the beginning of the game. That's why we're paying Aaron Jones $12 million a year. That's why you drafted A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round. And it's why you have all these offensive linemen. They have drafted so many offensive linemen over the last 3 drafts that, clearly they had a plan in place. Like, they want to have a sustainable offense, an offense that doesn't just rely on throwing the ball 45 to 50 times a game. If Aaron Jones is healthy, he should be a bigger part of this game plan. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully Nate's computer will be up and running next week, and we will be recording again Sunday about halftime, a little bit after halftime from the Sunday night football game. Please reach out to us. You can leave comments on the YouTube video. We also have a podcast. You can subscribe to it on Spotify and YouTube. You can find us at Toilets of Titles on both of those platforms. It was very nice to, try to do this on my own. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next week.